The summons. Captain Ilara Voss stood on the bridge of the ESS Orion, her gaze fixed on the holographic display before her. The rotating image of Earth, serene and blue, belied the tension that hung thick in the recycled air. "Captain, incoming transmission from Terran Command," Lieutenant Mikhail Petrov called out from the communications station. "Priority 1, ma'am." Ilara's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Priority 1 meant only one thing these days: the Galactic Council. "On screen," she ordered, turning to face the main view screen. The familiar blue and green of her homeworld disappeared, replaced by the stern visage of Admiral Shen Shao of Terran Command. "Captain Voss." Admiral Shen began without preamble, his voice grave. "I'll cut straight to it. The Galactic Council has issued an ultimatum. They're demanding that humanity submit to their rule and dismantle our warships immediately. Refusal, they say, will be met with severe consequences." Ilara felt a flicker of anger kindle deep in her chest. The Council, a coalition of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful races, had always viewed humanity with a mix of condescension and unease. Earth's rapid technological advancement, since achieving interstellar flight a mere century ago, had only deepened their distrust. "With all due respect, Admiral," Ilara said carefully, "has the Council offered any specific justification for this demand? Any evidence that humanity poses a threat to galactic peace?" Admiral Shen's thin smile held no humor. "Nothing beyond the usual vague insinuations about our unchecked aggression and reckless expansionism, as if establishing a handful of colonies and defending our trade routes constitutes warmongering." He sighed, his shoulders sagging almost imperceptibly under the weight of his duties. "But the Council's motives are irrelevant at this point. What matters is that they've summoned a delegation from Earth to their headquarters on Pharaoh Station to discuss the terms of our surrender. And they've requested, or rather demanded, that you be part of that delegation, Captain Voss." Ilara blinked in surprise. "Me, sir? Why would they?" The realization hit her like a plasma bolt. The Orion's recent skirmish with Vorian raiders at the edge of Earth's space. The Council must have gotten wind of it. "I see," she said grimly. "They want to make an example of me. The upstart human captain who dared to defend her people." "Most likely," Admiral Shen agreed. "But this is also an opportunity, Ilara. A chance to face the Council directly, to make our case for coexistence and cooperation as equals." His dark eyes bored into hers, intense and unwavering. "I won't lie to you, Captain. The odds are stacked against us. The Council is ancient, powerful, and utterly convinced of their own superiority. But if anyone can navigate these treacherous waters, it's you." Ilara drew in a deep breath, squaring her shoulders beneath the weight of her duty. "I understand, Admiral. The Orion and her crew are at Earth's service as always. I know you won't let us down, Captain Voss." Terran Command out. The screen went blank, the silence on the bridge broken only by the hum of the ship's engines. Ilara turned to her crew, taking in their worried faces. Many of them were barely out of the academy, thrust into a conflict they couldn't have imagined when they first signed up to explore the stars. But there was courage there too, and determination. The indomitable human spirit that had carried their species from the savannas of ancient Africa to the cold void of space. "Helm, set a course for Pharaoh Station," she ordered, her voice steady and clear. "Best speed. And tactical, I want a full report on the Orion's combat readiness within the hour. If the Council wants a show of strength, we'll give them one." As her crew leaped into action with crisp efficiency, Ilara allowed herself a moment to gaze once more at the image of Earth, hovering serenely above the bridge. The blue marble that had birthed countless generations, nurtured countless dreams. Dreams of a future among the stars, of a destiny beyond the bounds of a single world. And now, on the knife's edge of conflict, those dreams rested on the shoulders of Ilara and her crew. On the strength of human ingenuity, courage, and sheer bloody-minded determination. The Orion leaped to warp, racing toward an uncertain future, an unknown fate. But one thing was certain in Ilara's heart as the stars streaked by outside the viewports. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever trials the Galactic Council had in store, humanity would face them head-on, and they would prevail. For Earth, for the future, for all the dreams yet to be born under stranger skies. Tense negotiations. The Orion decelerated from warp, the swirling vortex of hyperspace giving way to a dizzying array of stars. And there, hanging in the void like a glittering jewel, was Pharaoh's Station, the seat of the Galactic Council's power. Ilara couldn't help but feel a grudging sense of awe as she took in the sight. The station was massive, easily dwarfing the Orion and the handful of other human ships that had accompanied them. Its gleaming spires and sweeping curves spoke of a technology far beyond anything Earth had yet achieved. But there was a coldness to its beauty, a sense of sterile perfection that set Ilara's teeth on edge. It was a reflection, she thought, of the Council itself, ancient, powerful, and utterly divorced from the messy realities of mortal life. "Captain, we're being hailed," Lieutenant Petrov reported, his voice taut with tension. "It's the Council." Ilara nodded, squaring her shoulders as she turned to face the view screen. On screen, the image that flickered to life was not what she had expected. Instead of the imposing chamber of the Council, she found herself staring at a single figure, a tall, slender being with skin the color of burnished silver and eyes that glowed a piercing blue. "Captain Voss," the figure said, its voice melodic and strangely resonant. "I am Talon, emissary of the Galactic Council. Your delegation is expected in the Great Hall. Please proceed to Docking Bay Alpha 3. And come alone." The screen went blank before Ilara could respond, leaving her staring at her own reflection in the darkened glass. "Well," she said dryly, turning to her first officer, Commander Zhang Lai, "it seems our hosts are as charming as ever." Zhang's lips twitched in a humorless smile. "Indeed, Captain. Shall I assemble an escort team?" Ilara shook her head. "No. If this is a trap, a few more bodies won't make a difference. And if it's not, well, best not to antagonize them further." She squared her shoulders, heading for the turbolift. "The bridge is yours, Commander. If anything happens to me, we'll come and get you," Zhang said firmly. "Count on it, Captain." Ilara allowed herself a small, grateful smile as the lift doors hissed shut. It was a comfort, knowing her crew had her back, even here, in the heart of the Council's power. The journey to the Great Hall passed in a blur of gleaming corridors and alien faces, each more inscrutable than the last. Ilara kept her head high, her stride confident, even as she felt the weight of countless eyes upon her, evaluating, judging. At last, she stood before the towering doors of the Great Hall. They swung open silently at her approach, revealing a vast, circular chamber dominated by a raised dais. Upon it sat 7 figures, each as strange and varied as the worlds they represented. In the center was Talon, its silver skin glinting under the stark light. To its right was a hulking, reptilian creature with scales the color of blood and eyes that smoldered like coals. To its left, a willowy being that seemed more plant than animal, its skin a verdant green shot through with pulsing veins of bioluminescence. And arrayed around them, a menagerie of the galaxy's most powerful races. The insectoid Kicks, clicking and chittering in their strange language. The crystalline Boru, their faceted bodies refracting the light into dazzling rainbows. The gaseous Ilari, swirling in hypnotic patterns within their containment fields. All of them staring at her, the lone human in their midst. Ilara took a deep breath, stepping forward into the center of the chamber. She bowed, a precise, measured gesture that conveyed respect without subservience. "Counselors," she said, her voice ringing out in the silence. "I am Captain Ilara Voss of the Earth Space Fleet. I come on behalf of humanity to discuss the future of our relations with the galactic community." Talon leaned forward, its glowing eyes fixed on Ilara's face. "You mean," it said softly, You come to negotiate the terms of your surrender. Ilara met its gaze without flinching. No, counselor. I come to find a path to peace, one that respects the sovereignty and dignity of all species, humanity included. A ripple of murmurs went through the assembled counselors, a susurrus of clicks, hisses, and ethereal whispers. The reptilian creature to Talon's right slammed a clawed fist down on the arm of its chair, the sound echoing like a thunderclap. Impudence. It snarled, its voice a guttural rasp. You dare speak of sovereignty, of dignity, when your kind rampages unchecked through the stars. When you build fleets and forge weapons in defiance of this council's will. Ilara felt a flare of anger, hot and bright in her chest. But she pushed it down, keeping her voice steady and calm. With respect, counselor, she said, humanity has done nothing but defend ourselves and our allies from aggression. We seek no conquest, no domination, only the right to live and grow and explore in peace. The plant-like being to Talon's left stirred, its bioluminescent veins pulsing in agitation. And yet your growth is unchecked, your exploration reckless. You spread like a virus, consuming resources, disrupting the delicate balance of the cosmos. Ilara shook her head, a hint of steel entering her voice. We are not a virus, counselor. We are a people. A young people, yes, with much still to learn. But also a people with much to offer. New ideas, new perspectives, new ways of being. Is that not the true strength of the galactic community? Its diversity, its capacity for change and growth. Talon held up a slender hand, silencing the murmurs that had begun to build once more. Its eyes bored into Ilara's, searching, evaluating. Pretty words, Captain Voss, it said at last. But words are wind. The Council deals in actions, in the cold calculus of power. And the truth is, your actions have shown humanity to be a threat, a destabilizing force that must be brought to heel for the good of all. Ilara felt a chill run down her spine. There it was, laid bare, the Council's true face, stripped of all pretense and diplomacy. And if we refuse? She asked quietly, though she already knew the answer. Talon's smile was as cold as the void. Then, Captain, you will feel the full weight of this council's displeasure. Your worlds will burn, your fleets will be scattered, and your people will learn the price of defiance. The chamber erupted into a cacophony of noise, each counselor shouting to be heard over the others. But Ilara barely heard them. Her mind was racing, grappling with the enormity of the choice before her. Submit and condemn humanity to a future of servitude and stagnation. Fight and risk the devastation of all she held dear. But even as despair clawed at her heart, a small, fierce flame of hope flickered to life. A memory of Earth, blue and beautiful, cradled in the infinite dark. Of the indomitable spirit that had carried her people from the depths of the ocean to the farthest reaches of the stars. No, she thought, as she drew herself up to her full height. Not like this. Not without a fight. For Earth, for humanity, for the dream of a future forged in freedom, not fear. She met Talon's gaze, her own eyes blazing with resolve. I will take your message back to my people, counselor. But know this, humanity will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We will stand, we will struggle, and we will prevail. For we are human, and our destiny is the stars. With that, she turned on her heel and strode from the chamber, head held high, even as the shouts of the counselors echoed in her ears. The die was cast. The battle was begun. And though the road ahead was dark and uncertain, one thing was sure in Ilara's heart. Humanity would fight, and humanity would win. Preparations for war. The journey back to Earth was a somber one. Ilara sat in her quarters, staring out at the swirling vortex of hyperspace, her mind churning with the implications of what had transpired on Pharaoh Station. War. It was a word that hung heavy in the recycled air of the Orion, a specter that haunted the dreams of all aboard. For generations, humanity had looked to the stars with hope and wonder, dreaming of the day when they would take their place among the galactic community. But now, those dreams had turned to ashes in the face of the Council's ultimatum. Submit or be destroyed. Bow or be broken. Ilara's jaw clenched at the memory of Talon's cold, imperious gaze, the utter certainty in its voice as it pronounced humanity's doom. The arrogance of it, the sheer, unmitigated gall. But beneath the anger, beneath the righteous fury, there was fear. Cold, creeping fear that whispered in the dark corners of her mind. Could humanity really hope to stand against the might of the Galactic Council? Against civilizations that had ruled the stars for millennia, that commanded technologies beyond human ken? She shook her head, banishing the doubts. They had no choice. To submit would be to condemn humanity to a future of stagnation and servitude, to resign their children and their children's children to a life lived under the heel of alien masters. No, better to fight, to strive, to rage against the dying of the light. And if they were to fall, let it be as free beings, with their heads held high and their spirits unbroken. The Orion dropped out of warp at the edge of the Sol system, the familiar constellations of home wheeling into view. But even here, there was no rest, no respite. The system was abuzz with activity, warships and transports darting to and fro like angry hornets. Ilara made her way to the bridge, her steps heavy with the weight of what was to come. As she entered, the crew snapped to attention, their faces grim and determined. "Captain on deck." Commander Jang barked, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Ilara nodded, taking her seat in the command chair. "At ease," she said, her voice steady and calm. "What's our status?" Jang stepped forward, his datapad clutched in white-knuckled hands. "Fleet Command has ordered a full mobilization, Captain. Every ship, every soldier, every resource we have is being marshaled for the fight to come." Ilara closed her eyes for a moment, letting the enormity of it wash over her. A full mobilization. It was a step that hadn't been taken since the darkest days of the Voran War, a century ago. A step that spoke of the utter seriousness of the situation they now faced. "Understood," she said at last, opening her eyes. "And our orders?" "We are to report to the Hephaestus shipyards at once, Captain. The Orion is to undergo a full refit and upgrade, incorporating the latest advancements from the Prometheus project." Ilara's eyebrows shot up at that. The Prometheus project, the whispered-of, black-budget program that had consumed trillions of credits and the brightest minds humanity had to offer. A program whose fruits had been jealously guarded, hidden away in secret labs, and guarded by armies of stone-faced soldiers. Until now. "Very well," she said, a glimmer of hope kindling in her chest. "Set a course for Hephaestus, best speed. And send word to engineering. I want a full diagnostic on all systems, down to the last bolt and circuit. If we're going to war, I want this ship in fighting trim." "Aye, Captain," Jang said, a fierce grin spreading across his face. "We'll show those council bastards what human ingenuity can do." As the Orion surged forward, the glittering spires of the Hephaestus shipyards looming into view, Ilara allowed herself a moment to savor the fierce, hot joy of purpose. The joy of knowing that, come what may, they would face this trial as they had faced all others. Together, undaunted, human to the core. The days that followed passed in a blur of frenzied activity and ceaseless toil. The Orion was stripped down to its bones, every system and subsystem scrutinized, optimized, re-engineered. New weapons were installed, sleek and deadly, their muzzles thrumming with barely contained power. Shields were upgraded, hulls were reinforced, engines were tuned to a razor's edge. And through it all, the crew worked with a fierce, almost manic energy. They were the best of the best, the cream of Earth's space fleet. Engineers and technicians, soldiers and scientists, united in a single unwavering purpose: to forge a weapon, a shield, a hope for humanity's future. Ilara oversaw it all, her presence a constant on the decks and in the labs. She pored over schematics and simulations, consulted with the brightest minds the fleet had to offer. And slowly, surely, a plan began to take shape. A plan that hinged on the fruits of the Prometheus project, on the bleeding edge of human ingenuity and daring. A plan that just might work, if they were brave enough, if they were bold enough, if they were human enough. And as the final pieces fell into place, as the Orion emerged from the shipyards, sleek and deadly and thrumming with barely contained power, Ilara felt a grim, fierce certainty settle over her. They would fight. They would strive. They would rage against the dying of the light. And in the end, come what may, they would be remembered as heroes, as legends, as humans now and forever. The battle begins. The void of space was silent. It was always silent, a vast emptiness that swallowed sound, light, life itself. But today that silence was heavy with the weight of anticipation, of dread, of the calm before the storm. On the bridge of the ESS Orion, Captain Ilara Voss stood tall and proud, her gaze fixed on the holographic display that hung in the air before her. It showed the massed forces of the Earth space fleet, arrayed in tight formation against the starry backdrop of the Sol system. There were hundreds of ships, from sleek frigates to massive dreadnoughts, their hulls gleaming in the light of distant suns. And at their center, the Orion itself, the flagship of the fleet, the symbol of humanity's defiance. Ilara's heart swelled with pride at the sight, even as a cold knot of fear twisted in her gut. They were ready as they could be. The ships were primed, the crews were drilled to perfection. The new weapons of the Prometheus project hummed with barely contained power. But would it be enough? Against the might of the Galactic Council, against the ancient and terrible forces that had held sway over the stars for untold millennia. She shook her head, banishing the thought. It had to be enough. There was no other choice, no other hope. "Captain," Lieutenant Petrov called out, his voice taut with tension. "Long-range sensors are picking up a massive gravitational disturbance. It's the Council fleet. They're dropping out of hyperspace." Ilara's breath caught in her throat. This was it, the moment of truth, the moment that would decide the fate of her species. "Red alert," she said, her voice calm and steady. "All hands to battle stations. Raise shields, charge weapons. Prepare to engage the enemy." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as the crew scrambled to obey, their faces grim and determined. The Orion's hull thrummed as the mighty engines roared to life, the ship surging forward to meet its destiny. And then, with a soundless flash of light, the Council fleet appeared. It was a sight that struck terror into the heart of every human who beheld it. Thousands of ships, each one a work of alien art, all curves and spires and strange, unsettling geometries. They hung in space like a swarm of angry hornets, their hulls glinting with the cold light of unfamiliar stars. At their center, a massive vessel that dwarfed even the Orion, its surface a swirling maelstrom of dark energy and twisted space, the flagship of the Council, the seat of their power and their arrogance. Ilara felt a flicker of fear, quickly suppressed. They were outmatched, outnumbered, outgunned, but they were not outclassed. Not where it mattered. Not in the realm of the human spirit. "This is Captain Ilara Voss of the Earth Space Fleet," she said, her voice ringing out across the comm channels. "To the ships of the Galactic Council, I say this. We come not in conquest, but in defense. In defense of our right to exist, to thrive, to chart our own course among the stars." There was a moment of silence, heavy and pregnant with meaning. Then a voice crackled across the comm, cold and imperious. "Captain Voss, you were warned of the consequences of defiance. You were given a choice, and you chose poorly. Now, you will pay the price." Ilara's lips curled in a defiant smile. "We choose to pay no price but that of our own making, Counselor. We choose to stand, to fight, to live or die as free beings. And if that is a poor choice in your eyes, then so be it." She turned to her crew, her eyes blazing with the fire of conviction. Engage the enemy. For Earth, for humanity. For the future we will forge with our own hands. And with those words, the battle began. It was a maelstrom of fire and fury, a dance of death on a scale beyond human comprehension. Ships wheeled and spun, weapons flared and pulsed, shields flared and shattered under the onslaught of alien energies. The Orion was at the heart of it, a whirlwind of destruction, its new weapons tearing through the Council fleet like a hot knife through butter. The Prometheus cannons, the quantum torpedoes, the phase-shifted shields, all the fruits of human ingenuity and desperation, brought to bear against an enemy that had never known defeat. But even as they fought, even as they raged against the dying of the light, Ilara knew it wasn't enough. The Council ships were too many, their weapons too powerful. For every one they destroyed, 10 more took its place, an endless tide of alien might. And then the unthinkable happened. The Orion's shields flickered and died, the hull breached by a searing lance of dark energy. Consoles exploded, crew members screamed as the cold vacuum of space rushed in. Ilara clung to her chair as the ship shuddered and groaned around her, alarms blaring, lights flickering. This was it, she thought. The end, the final bitter fruit of human defiance. But even as despair clawed at her heart, a voice rang out across the bridge. A voice she knew, a voice she trusted above all others. "Captain." Commander Jang shouted, his face bloody but unbowed. "The Prometheus drive. It's ready." Ilara's eyes widened, a sudden fierce hope surging through her veins. The Prometheus drive. The final, untested weapon of the project, a device that harnessed the fundamental forces of the universe itself. A device that could turn the tide of the battle, or destroy them all in the process. She hesitated for a moment, the weight of the decision heavy on her shoulders. But in the end, there was no choice, no other hope. "Engage the drive," she said, her voice steady and clear. "Give them everything we've got." And with those words, the Orion leaped forward, a blazing spear of light and fury, straight into the heart of the Council fleet. The Prometheus drive roared to life, space itself warping and twisting around the ship, the very fabric of reality straining at the seams. For a moment, a heartbeat, an eternity, the universe held its breath. And then, with a soundless roar of unleashed power, the Council flagship exploded. It was a sight that would be seared into the memories of all who witnessed it. A sun-gone nova, a supernova in the void, a cataclysm of light and heat and radiation that swept across the battlefield like the hand of an angry god. When it cleared, the Council fleet was gone, shattered, broken, scattered to the winds of space. And in its place, the Orion hung like a beacon of hope, battered but unbroken, a symbol of humanity's indomitable will. On the bridge, Ilara slumped back in her chair, her face streaked with sweat and blood, her heart pounding with the fierce, wild joy of victory. They had done it. Against all odds, against all hope, they had won. But even as the crew erupted into cheers around her, even as the comm channels filled with the jubilant voices of the fleet, she knew this was only the beginning. The Council would not forget this defeat, would not forgive this humiliation. There would be other battles, other trials, other sacrifices to be made. But for now, in this moment, they had earned the right to stand tall, to hold their heads high, to face the future with courage and conviction. For they were human, and they would never, ever surrender. A desperate gamble. In the days that followed the battle, a tense calm settled over the Sol system. The wreckage of the Council fleet hung in space, a silent testament to the fury of the fighting, the desperate valor of the Earth space fleet. But even as the people of Earth celebrated their victory, even as they hailed the heroes of the Orion as the saviors of humanity, Captain Ilara Voss knew the reprieve was only temporary. The Council would not let this defeat stand, would not allow the upstart humans to challenge their supremacy unchecked. Already, reports were filtering in of massive mobilizations on the Council worlds, of vast fleets and terrible weapons being assembled for a final, crushing assault on Earth. time was running out, and with it, any hope of a peaceful resolution. Ilara paced the length of her quarters, her mind racing with the enormity of the task before her. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. And with each passing day, the odds grew longer, the chances of victory more remote. She needed a plan, a strategy, a way to turn the tables on the Council once and for all. But what? What could one ship, one crew, one species do against the might of an empire that spanned the stars? And then, in a flash of inspiration, it came to her, a desperate gamble, a last-ditch effort to strike at the heart of the Council's power. It was a plan that would require skill, daring, and no small amount of luck. But it was the only way, the only hope. She summoned her senior officers to the briefing room, her face grim and determined as she laid out the details of the mission. They would take a small team, the best of the best, and infiltrate the Council's flagship. Once aboard, they would make their way to the ship's central computer core, and there, they would upload a virus, a piece of malware designed by the brightest minds of the Prometheus project. The virus would spread like wildfire through the Council's network, corrupting data, scrambling systems, sowing chaos and confusion in its wake. And in the midst of that chaos, the Earth fleet would strike, a final, all-out assault on the heart of the Council's power. It was a risky plan, a desperate plan, but it was the only way, the only hope. Her officers listened in silence, their faces a mix of fear and determination. They knew the odds, knew the stakes, but they also knew their captain, knew the fire that burned within her, the unbreakable will that had brought them this far. And so, with a final nod of assent, the plan was set in motion. The infiltration team was small, just a handful of the Orion's best and brightest. Ilara herself would lead them, her presence a talisman of hope, a symbol of humanity's resolve. They made their way to the shuttle bay, their faces grim beneath the helmets of their tactical gear. The shuttle that would carry them to the Council flagship hung before them. A sleek, black dart of a ship, bristling with the latest in stealth technology. Ilara paused at the threshold, her hand resting on the hilt of her sidearm. She turned to face her team, her eyes blazing with the fire of conviction. "This is it," she said, her voice steady and clear. "The moment of truth. The moment that will decide the fate of our species. I won't lie to you. The odds are long. The dangers are great. But I know each and every one of you. And I know the courage, the skill, the sheer, stubborn determination that burns within you." She took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping over the faces of her team. "Whatever happens today, whatever fate may bring, know that it has been an honor to serve with you, to fight beside you, to call you my brothers and sisters in arms." And with those words, she turned and stepped into the shuttle. The hatch ceiling shut behind her with a hiss of hydraulics. The journey to the Council flagship was a tense one. The shuttle's stealth systems pushed to their limits as they wove through the maze of sensors and patrols that surrounded the massive vessel. But the technology held, and they slipped through undetected, a ghost in the void. They docked with the flagship, the shuttle's airlock sealing against the alien hull with a clang of metal on metal. Ilara was the first through the hatch, her weapon at the ready, her senses heightened to a razor's edge. The corridors of the Council ship were strange, alien, all curves and angles and eerie, pulsing lights. But Ilara and her team moved through them with the sure-footed grace of predators, their steps silent, their weapons steady. They encountered resistance, of course, Council guards, drones, automated defense systems that fired on them with searing beams of energy. But they were the best of the best, and they cut through the opposition like a hot knife through butter, leaving a trail of shattered bodies and sparking wreckage in their wake. At last, they'd reached the central computer core, a vast, pulsing mass of circuitry and light. Ilara plugged in the data drive containing the virus, her fingers flying over the alien interface as she uploaded the malware into the system. For a moment, nothing happened. And then, with a sudden, shuddering jolt, the ship lurched beneath their feet. Alarms blared, lights flickered, Consoles sparked and sputtered as the virus spread like wildfire through the network. Ilara turned to her team, a fierce, exultant grin spreading across her face. "It's working," she said, her voice trembling with the thrill of victory. "The plan is working." But even as the words left her lips, a cold, sinking feeling settled into the pit of her stomach. The ship shuddered again, more violently this time, the deck bucking and heaving beneath their feet. And then, with a sickening lurch, gravity failed altogether, sending them floating into the air, their weapons and gear scattering in all directions. Ilara's mind raced, desperately trying to make sense of what was happening. And then, with a sudden, terrible clarity, she understood. The virus had worked too well, had spread too far, too fast. It had corrupted not just the Council's systems, but the very fabric of the ship itself, the delicate balance of forces that held it together against the vacuum of space. The flagship was tearing itself apart, and they were trapped on board, helpless to do anything but watch as the world ended around them. Ilara closed her eyes, a single crystalline tear floating away from her face in the zero gravity. This was it then. The end. The final, bitter fruit of her desperate gamble. But even as despair clawed at her heart, even as the ship shuddered and groaned its death throes around her, she felt a strange, fierce peace settle over her. They had done it. They had struck a blow against the Council, had given humanity a chance, however slim, however fleeting. And in the end, that was all that mattered. For they were human, and they had dared to dream, to hope, to fight for a future among the stars. And even in death, even in defeat, that dream, that hope, that indomitable human spirit would live on, a beacon of light in the darkness, a testament to the courage and conviction of a species that would never, ever surrender. Turning the tide. In the heart of the Earth space fleet, a sense of dread hung heavy in the air. The ships hung in formation, their crews tense and silent, their eyes fixed on the displays that showed the distant shape of the Council flagship, the titanic vessel that held the fate of humanity in its alien grasp. They had watched the Orion's shuttle dock with the behemoth, had seen the faint, flickering pulses of light that marked the progress of Captain Ilara Voss and her infiltration team. And then, with a suddenness that struck like a physical blow, those pulses had vanished, snuffed out like candles in a hurricane. A pall of despair settled over the fleet, a creeping, choking sense of hopelessness. If Ilara had failed, if the Council had triumphed, then what hope was there for the rest of them? What chance did they have against the might of an empire that spanned the stars? But even as they watched, even as they waited with bated breath for the hammer blow of the Council's wrath, something strange began to happen. The flagship shuddered, its hull rippling and distorting like a mirage in the desert heat. Explosions bloomed across its surface, vast, silent fireballs that flared and died in the vacuum of space. And then, with a final, cataclysmic burst of light, the ship simply came apart, its structure disintegrating into a cloud of debris and molten metal. For a moment, the fleet hung in stunned silence, scarcely daring to believe what they had just witnessed. And then, with a sudden, fierce roar of exultation, they surged forward, weapons blazing, engines roaring, a tidal wave of human fury and determination. The Council ships reeled back before the onslaught, their formations shattering, their lines crumbling. They had never faced an enemy like this, had never encountered a species that fought with such savagery, such relentless, implacable will. And at the heart of it all, leading the charge, was a single battered ship, its hull scorched and dented, its crew bloody but unbowed. The Orion, risen from the ashes of its own destruction, a phoenix of steel and fire. On the bridge, Commander Jang sat in the captain's chair, his face grim, his eyes blazing with the light of battle. He had taken command in Ilara's absence, had rallied the crew in the face of their darkest hour. And now, as the Council ships fell back before them, as the tide of battle turned in humanity's favor, he felt a fierce, exultant joy surge through his veins. They had done it. Against all odds, against all hope, They had turned the tables on the council, had struck a blow for freedom and justice that would echo through the ages. But even as he savored the thrill of victory, even as the bridge crew erupted into cheers around him, Jang's thoughts turned to Ilara, to the woman who had made it all possible. She was gone, he knew, sacrificed on the altar of humanity's future, a martyr to the cause of freedom. But her spirit, her indomitable will, lived on in the hearts and minds of every human who fought this day. They would remember her, he vowed. They would honor her memory, would carry her legacy forward into the stars. For she was Captain Ilara Voss, the savior of humanity, the hero of the Earth space fleet, and she would never be forgotten. As the battle raged on, as the council ships fell back in disarray, a strange, eerie calm settled over the Orion's bridge. The crew moved with quiet efficiency, their faces set in grim determination, their eyes fixed on the displays that showed the ebb and flow of the fight. And then, with a suddenness that sent a jolt of shock through the ship, a voice crackled over the comm, a voice that was achingly, impossibly familiar. "This is Captain Ilara Voss of the Earth Space Fleet," it said, and the bridge erupted into a frenzy of shouts and cheers. Jang leaped to his feet, his heart pounding with a wild, fierce hope. "Ilara," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "Is that you?" "It's me, Jang," the voice replied, and he could hear the smile in her words. "I made it. We made it." Tears streamed down Jang's face as he sagged back into the captain's chair, a wave of relief washing over him like a cool, cleansing rain. Ilara was alive. The infiltration team had survived, had escaped the destruction of the Council flagship. And now, with the virus spreading through the alien network, with the enemy in disarray and humanity on the offensive, victory was within their grasp. But even as he rejoiced, even as the crew celebrated around him, Jang knew the fight was far from over. The Council would not go quietly, would not surrender their power without a bitter, bloody struggle. There would be other battles, other sacrifices, other heroes lost to the pitiless void of space. But for now, in this moment, they had earned the right to hope, to dream, to believe in a future where humanity stood tall among the stars. And with Ilara at their side, with the indomitable spirit of the human race at their back, Jang knew that future was closer than ever before. The Orion surged forward, its engines roaring, its weapons blazing, a spear of light and fury in the darkness of space. And on its bridge, a crew of heroes stood united, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to fight and die for the dream of a better tomorrow. For they were human, and they would never, ever surrender. A new era. The war was over. The Council, once the mightiest power in the galaxy, lay shattered and broken, its fleets scattered, its worlds in revolt. And at the center of it all, standing tall and proud amid the rubble and the ruin, was the Earth Space Fleet. They had done the impossible, had achieved the unthinkable, against odds too vast to calculate, against enemies too terrible to comprehend. They had emerged victorious, had secured humanity's place among the stars. And now, as the dust of battle settled, as the people of Earth and its colonies emerged from their shelters to gaze up at the sky with new eyes, a sense of hope and wonder swept across the galaxy. For the first time in untold millennia, the balance of power had shifted. The old order, the ancient tyrannies that had held sway for so long, had been cast down, and in their place, a new dawn was rising. A dawn of freedom, of self-determination, of the inalienable right of every species to chart its own course, to reach for its own destiny. At the forefront of this new era stood Captain Ilara Voss, the hero of the Earth Space Fleet, the woman who had led humanity to victory against impossible odds. She stood on the bridge of the Orion, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen that showed the massed ships of the fleet, the gleaming, sleek vessels that had carried them through the fires of war. Beside her stood Commander Jang, his face lined with the scars of battle, his eyes shining with the light of a hard-won peace. They had been through hell together, had faced death and despair in the cold, pitiless void of space. But they had emerged stronger, wiser, more determined than ever to build a better future, a brighter tomorrow. "It's over," Ilara said softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. "We won." Jang nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "We did," he said. "But the hard part is just beginning." Ilara knew he was right. The war had been won, but the peace was still to be secured. There were treaties to be signed, alliances to be forged, a new order to be built from the ashes of the old. But as she looked out at the stars, at the infinite possibilities that stretched before them, she felt a sense of hope and purpose that transcended all the challenges that lay ahead. For they had proven something, she and her crew, her fleet, her species. They had shown the galaxy that humanity would not be cowed, would not be conquered, would not be relegated to the status of second-class citizens in the grand scheme of things. They had earned their place at the table, had won the right to shape their own destiny, to reach for the stars on their own terms. And now, as a new era dawned, as the old certainties crumbled and the old powers faded, they would seize that opportunity with both hands, would build a future that was bright and bold and full of infinite promise. Ilara turned to Jang, her eyes shining with the light of 1,000 suns. "Let's get to work," she said, and together they stepped forward into the unknown, into the vast, uncharted reaches of the future. In the days and weeks that followed, the Earth Space Fleet worked tirelessly to secure the peace they had won. They forged alliances with the newly liberated worlds of the former Council Empire, helped them rebuild and recover from the devastation of war. They reached out to the other spacefaring species of the galaxy, the ones who had watched from the sidelines as humanity and the Council clashed, and invited them to join in the great work of building a new and better future. And slowly, steadily, a new order began to take shape, a great and glorious commonwealth of the stars, bound together by the ideals of freedom, justice, and cooperation. At the heart of it all stood Earth, the birthplace of humanity, the shining beacon that had guided them through the darkness and into the light. And at the center of Earth stood the great city of Terra Prime, the capital of the new galactic order, the seat of the great council that would guide the Commonwealth into the future. Ilara stood at the podium before the assembled dignitaries of 100 worlds, her voice ringing out clear and strong across the great hall. "Today," she said, "we stand at the dawn of a new era, a time of hope and promise, of wonder and discovery. Today we take our first steps into a future that is bright and bold and full of infinite possibility. But let us never forget the sacrifices that brought us to this moment, the courage and determination of those who fought and died so that we might live in peace and freedom. Let us honor their memory by building a galaxy that is worthy of their sacrifice, a galaxy where every species, every world, every individual has the right to chart their own course, to reach for their own stars. For we are all children of the universe, all part of the great and glorious tapestry of life that stretches across the cosmos. And together, united in common purpose and common cause, there is nothing we cannot achieve, no dream we cannot make real. So let us go forward together, into the unknown, into the future, and let us build a galaxy that shines as a beacon of hope and inspiration for all the ages to come." As the applause rang out, as the delegates of 100 worlds rose to their feet in a standing ovation, Ilara felt a sense of pride and purpose that transcended all the trials and triumphs of the past. For this was the moment she had fought for, the dream she had held in her heart through all the long years of war and sacrifice. A dream of a galaxy at peace, of a future where all species could live and thrive together in harmony and cooperation. A dream that was now, at last, within reach, a shining reality that beckoned from the stars.